Would you take the Word of God this evening and turn with me to Matthew chapter 25? Matthew and chapter 25. We have been covering a topic, and it's not my particular habit to deal with topics, but I think we all understand that it's important sometimes to deal with certain topics. As Bible believers, we believe that God's Word gives us direction, gives us principles and precepts for every area of our lives. I hope that we understand that. And one of those areas is the stewardship of life. And we have to learn to reconcile the truth that we are citizens of heaven. The earth is not our permanent abode. We're just passing through. Our conversation is in heaven, from whence cometh our hope. And our hope is in the Lord Jesus Christ. But also, while we're on earth, God has given to us principles and precepts through the book of Proverbs, even Proverbs that help us to live in this life while we're here. And so we have to learn to apply those things to our lives. And so we've been dealing with some practical things on stewarding money God's way. If I could give you a summary on how to reach financial stability by implementing a certain amount of rules, and I could call them principles or proverbs because they come from God's Word. Let me repeat a summary of this series, all right? But with an understanding that we are stewards and not possessors. So we came with nothing in this world, and it is certain that we will leave with nothing. So everything that we have is temporary. That means we live as stewards. Nothing is permanent. And so we have to learn to steward what we have for the glory of God. And we also have to learn in this world not to be content with what we have, not to be covetous. And there's a balance there. Now, if we're going to achieve financial stability, one of the first things we have to do is we have to create and submit ourselves to a budget. And what I mean by that is the Bible principle in God's Word is that God is a God of order, and God wants everything to be done decently and in order. God is not the author of confusion. And so I think there's a pattern in God's Word where you think about the world, it's all in order. God has done it. And we have to learn to order our lives. And part of that is to organizing our finances and our possessions for the glory of God. I mentioned also that if we're going to reach financial stability, we're going to have to pay off all of our debts as quickly as possible, because the borrower is slave to the lender. He is a servant to the lender. And so getting rid of debt as quickly as possible is a good thing. Also, sometimes if you are maybe in trouble financially, one of the good remedies is to increase your income. And you can do that by, here's a summary of that lesson: work, work, work. And sometimes it may come in our lives where we may have to work to get out of a huge debt burden in our lives. Also, I talked about finding ways to reduce your spending. When we talked about the income and the inflow and outflow, that our spending must always be less than what we bring in. Now, I know this may seem basic, but it's obvious, as I've shared with you some statistics, that that's not how people live. That the majority of people, even in this year, I think it's 60% of people in America, I shared that last week, spent more money in the last 6 months than they made. That's not good. That's not good as a general rule. Also, spending money wisely and learning to delay gratification. That's what we have to do. By the way, when you start off in life, don't think that you should have everything that your grandparents have. They took a lifetime to get to what they have, and so don't expect to have the latest car, the biggest house, the best furniture. Learn to delay gratification. I also mentioned last week was save money for large purchases instead of going into debt. Now, sometimes you may have gone into debt, but try to, as much as you can, to put money aside for important purchases and to foresee, right? The Bible says that a wise man foresees the evil and he hideth himself. And so, if you know that the roof on your house is 30 years old, it'd be good to start preparing for a new roof. And so that's just about foreseeing things. And God is, yes, we can trust God, but God has also given us a mind where we can think and we can prepare and do what is right. And this evening I'm going to talk about investing wisely towards your future. So the title of the lesson this evening, I guess we have the handout. I have a limited amount of handouts. So I said one per family. So if you want to follow, there's no fill in the blank, but because of the amount of things I want to cover. But now I am not a financial advisor. I'm a pastor. I'm not here to make you a millionaire. I'm just here to give you some principles and maybe to give you a layout of our the financial layout of what is available to us. If we were in a different country, I probably would not give you the same lesson. Does that make sense? Because there's not the same opportunities. And so we have to study our environment. We have to know where we are and know how to best use what God has entrusted and given to us. And so we have to think about those things. So let's look at Matthew chapter 25. Where do we get this principle of investing? Well, we get that from Jesus Christ himself. Notice Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. Now, I know, before we go into this, somebody say, this is a parable of the kingdom of heaven. This is not about finances and investing. But let me give you this important thing about parables. When Jesus Christ spoke in parables, yes, his point is to communicate a spiritual truth, but he often gives us an account of something that is earthly. And he describes that earthly practice as being a good thing and how we can equate that to something spiritual. Okay? And so here he's going to talk about investing. Now the point of the parable is not about investing. It's a spiritual truth. But he is using a good earthly principle that comes from the book of Proverbs. And he is going to relate that to the spiritual truth. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to interpret the spiritual truth of this parable. We're just going to talk about the earthly principle that is there. So notice with me Matthew 25, verse 14. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, and to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according as his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. So how many talents does he have now? 10. He's doubled. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. How many talents does he have? 4. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoned with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord, of thy Lord. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that is thine. Can you imagine maybe the pride he felt that moment? Look, I have the talent you gave me. Verse 26. His Lord answered and said unto him, now think about the words, Thou wicked and slothful servant. Thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Usury is interest. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, as I mentioned here, my purpose in this lesson is not to interpret and to draw the spiritual illustration out of this text here, but to give us the earthly principle, which is a good one. And that is to invest. Why should we invest? Now, before we get into that, again, Jesus Christ, here he's speaking about the kingdom of heaven. Jesus often spoke in parables, and a parable is basically the Lord using an earthly illustration that everybody knows, that everybody is familiar with, but he is trying to convey a spiritual truth. And in this case, Jesus uses a good example to convey a spiritual truth. And so the earthly illustration has to do with investing with what you have, with what has been entrusted to you. And there's a sense, as I talked about, we are stewards, we are not possessors. What we have is really God entrusts to us. And so we are to use our current possessions to gain more possessions. That's the biblical principle that we have here. Now, as we think about here, there's 3 stewards in this account. The first steward had 5 talents. The second one had 2. The third one had 1. The first steward, who had 5 talents, he traded the 5 talents and he gained 5 more talents, so he ends up with 10. He doubled what we could say, invested in. The second steward had 2 talents. He gained 2 more. He also doubled his investment. But the third steward, the Bible says he digged in the earth and hid the money. And the result was this: no gain with what he had. No gain. Now, when the Lord comes and speaks to the first stewards, he presents to him the 10 talents. The second steward presents to the Lord the 4 talents. And the third steward presents to his Lord the talent that he gave them, the same exact one. Now, the result of steward number 1 and number 2 is that when they turn over their talents to what belongs to their Lord, he gives them greater responsibility because they doubled what they had received. The third steward, who just kept what he had, that talent is taken away. Now, what is the condemnation of the third steward? Well, he is called by the Lord a wicked and slothful servant. This servant, it is evident from the text, he misused what was entrusted to him. Now, we may pause here and say, well, wait a minute, how did he misuse what he had? He brought back the same. Well, that's not what the Lord wanted. The Lord wanted to have gain from what he entrusted to the steward. And so he misused what was entrusted to him, even though he kept it. We also see that the servant failed to invest the money that he had, because that's exactly what the other two stewards did, who were commended for what they did. And he failed to invest. And that's exactly what his Lord said. He said, well, wait a minute. You could have gone to the money changers. You could have made interest on it. You could have done something with it. And so the principle is you failed to invest the money that you had. And so this servant is called unprofitable. Unprofitable. Now, there is a Proverbs that we learn in the Old Testament. Proverbs 13:22 says this: a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Now, I want us to think about that, because here, this is important here, we're talking about an inheritance, so that means that you invest in something. That means that when you die, there's an inheritance to give. The idea of investing and storing up for the future is not so that we can have much for ourselves, but that we can pass along the things that God has given to us to another generation, and we can even say to the work of God. And so the point here of investing is not to be rich. You remember what Jesus said about the rich man who had the barns? He said, well, what am I going to do? I got more corn. I'm going to tear down my barns and build greater. And Jesus said, what? Thou fool. He laid up riches for himself, but he was not rich toward God. And so he failed. And so the goal, again, of investing is not to become rich, but to live by biblical principles. There is a difference, by the way, we talked about last week about saving. There is a difference between saving and investing. A savings plan will provide reserves for your future, while investing is designed to potentially grow your wealth over a long period of time. You see, investment refers to funds that you use, that you have to earn more money, exactly like these steward did here in Matthew chapter 25. And so an investment, therefore, is the placement of your resources into a venture with prospects of obtaining a greater return. Now, typically, investments are exposed to greater risks than savings, but they often yield higher return than the saving itself. So there's a difference between investing and saving. Now, those who hope to retire with what they have in their savings, I think might be disappointed in the end because money over time loses value. That is true for every society in human history ever. That always happens. And so when the value, for example, in America here, we live in the 21st century, so we have the dollar, which is the exchange mechanism. And so when the value of the dollar drops and the cost of living rises, it means that the money will be worth less if you just keep it in the bank and don't do anything with it. The value decreases over time. And so the idea of investing wisely is the idea of growing to stay ahead of the inflation and make retirement more comfortable. By the way, you should not live your life to one day depend on the government. You should take care of yourself, not try to depend on somebody else. You see, because you need to protect some of your money, I think it's good to have a portion in savings for safekeeping, but because your money loses value over time, you should consider investing some of it to ensure that you are able to survive once you retire, or even you might not be able to work one day. And I don't think it's wise as a Christian to depend on the Social Security Administration that has repeatedly mismanaged funds and has basically bankrupted the institution. I don't think that's a reliable source. Now, we know what they always do. They always print more money, and they'll raise taxes. You know, that's the way they always do it. But the point is, look, I think we're taught by the Bible not to depend on somebody else for our safekeeping, but to try to do our best to take care of ourselves and to live by biblical principles. Now, let me give you here, now this is just a scenario, okay? So this is going to happen if you do this. This is just a scenario, but I want to illustrate to you the difference between investing over a long period of time and someone who doesn't invest but maybe starts that later on. What is the potential of investing? And if you think about it here, in Matthew chapter 25, the one who put the most in got the greater return. The one who had 5 talents got another 5. The one who had 2 got 2 more. And so the point is that the one who put more in investment yielded a greater return. And that is particularly, that is true when it comes to investing. But let me give you an illustration as to the potential investing. Consider here a very simple hypothetical which should illustrate the point. Bill and Steve graduated from college and entered the workforce together. Knowing that he could afford the payments, Bill bought a brand new car at $20,000. He paid it off over 5 years. Steve, however, unlike Bill, decided to buy a modest car for $5,000, and with the remaining $15,000, over the same period of time, the 5 years where Bill made his payments, he invested that $15,000 by the age of 27. So think about it. So he invested Steve $15,000, and let's just take, now this is just an average over 30 years, okay? 12%. Let's say he averages 12% return on that $15,000 investment at 27, which is compounded annually with no further investment than the initial $15,000. By the time he reaches age 65, he would have $1,112,000. Okay? By the age 27, he's already invested $15,000. Let's say 30-year market, 12% return, annual return. Now, it'll vary every year, but the point is you don't look at year to year. You look over a 30-year return. We're talking about $1 million by the age 65. That's just running the numbers at 12%. Now, I know it may not be, it could be 10, it could be 16%, it could be 8, but the point is 12 is a good round number. Now, had he waited to retire at 68, just a few more years, he would have had 40 more percent, which would arrive at $1,563,000 for that same investment. Why? Because it grows exponentially the earlier you put it on. So this shows how much wealth can grow as time elapses. Investing early in life allows your money to earn interest longer and to potentially multiply your investment. Now, if we go back to Bill, let's think about Bill for just a moment. He spent his money on a car early in life and failed to develop the habit of saving. When he reaches 37, so that's 10 years after, he realizes that he needed to start setting money aside for retirement. He figured that the next 28 years would give him ample time to save for his future. So he put $3,000 a year into a mutual fund that earned also 12% interest. He also retired at 65, but this is how much money he had. $572,000. Although he invested $69,000 more than Steve did, he had just over half as much as Steve when he retired because he delayed investing. You see, in essence, his new car cost him $500,000. At the time, a new car seemed like a good idea, but hindsight shows that he would have been better off saving for his golden years. And by the way, this is a scenario that is repeated by many young people today. And I'll give you a little story because I mentioned this already, but I know that there are some, and look, it's just the reality. I'll give you an example of pastors. I know some pastors that early on in their ministry, they put money aside and they invested that money. And I also know some pastors who have the mentality, well, we trust God, and I don't need to invest. God will take care of me. And when the pastor over here who invested over a period of lifetime, 30, 40 years, he can retire comfortably, while the pastor over here who saved nothing all of his life, who just said, well, God will take care of me, now today, I know pastors today who are in need, who don't have enough to live on. Why? Because they didn't prepare for the future. Now, that's just reality. And now, those pastors who used to say to the other pastor, well, you just need to trust God. Now they're looking and say, hey, what can you do? Because I need to start on it now. And for many of them, it's too late. The idea of investment is the greater return. Again, this is not about getting rich quickly. We're not talking about investing in the stock market and being a day trader. We're talking about a lifetime of putting money aside, of continually investing again and again and again. Now, there's many, we'll talk about the different ways that we can invest, but let me just talk about generally the stock market, because here right now it's crashing. Everybody's panicking and so on. Take your money out. The economy is going to crash. Well, that's what they said in 2008. And what happened in 2000 when everybody took their money out, they lost money. You know who didn't lose money? The people who didn't take money out. The people who didn't take money out didn't lose anything. Why? Because the market rebounded. And so over a 30-year period, the people who didn't take their money out, they still made money. The scenario here, by the way, the average market return, the S&P 500, is 12%. So this is not an out-of-this-world calculation. By the age 27, if you invested $15,000, you'd have over $1 million by the time you reach 65. It's not about being a millionaire. It's about, hey, should we use our money for growth if the potential is there? Now, the lesson here we learn is as follows. Save and invest as much as possible, especially early in life. The earlier, the better. Investing should be viewed as a necessity to provide for your future rather than an all-consuming desire to become rich. All right, that's really important. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to give you some investing options. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, again, I'm saying this, but this could be different if we lived in a different part of the world. But this is the part of the world that we live in. And so here are some opportunities. Now, what are some investing options? Now, the purpose of this lesson, as I mentioned earlier, is not to guide you to make any particular investments, but rather to describe the opportunities that are available. Because I don't want you to say, well, you said to invest in this and it failed. I didn't tell you to invest in anything. I'm just giving you the options. You have to do your homework. And by the way, there are people who have, how many of you, and this might be an awkward question, how many of you have a financial advisor? Okay, there is a number of you. That is a good thing to do. To have a financial advisor is a good thing to do. And so why? Because they advise you. They give you all the options. By the way, a good financial advisor is somebody who teaches you and advises you, not somebody who does all the decision for you. A good advisor is someone who can teach you in a way that things make sense, right? Not dictate things to you. If you don't understand something, people say don't invest in it if you don't understand it. And so let me give you here some option. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of potential investment opportunities, but those are the most evident ones. Let me give you, first of all, the first one in your notes is stocks and bonds. What are those? Well, a stock is basically a share in a company. Now, when companies want to raise money for their business, they may exchange shares of their companies for cash. And so if you own a stock in a company, the value of your share will increase as the company performs well. However, if the company begins to lose money, the value of the company falls and causes your shares in the company to lose value. And so stocks are bought and sold through the stock market and are usually handled by brokers who trade shares on behalf of others. Now, based on the state of the economy, the stock market will either be in they'll call it a bear market, or it will be in a bull market. When the stock market is down, it is called a bear market. When the stock market is up, or the economy is up, it is known as a bull market. So, let me give you some important rules, though, at investing. And by the way, I shouldn't start by saying I don't recommend, because, but financial advisors across the board would give you some important rules. Let me give you some of those. Rule number one is don't ever panic sell. The only people who lose money in the stock market are those who sell when the stock market is down. That's the only people who lose money. By the way, 70% of day traders lose money. 70% of day traders lose money. I do not recommend trading stocks. If you're investing, I believe you're investing over 30, 40 years, not in a day. But we live in a society that wants to become a millionaire today, right? We're talking about delayed gratification using biblical principles. Don't panic sell. Don't sell in the bear market. If you do not sell your share in the bear market, you don't lose any money. You see, the bear market is usually a good opportunity actually to buy. But what happens is, you listen to the radio, you listen to the news, says everything's going to go up in flames, and everybody sells. And so when everybody sells, typically when everybody sells, it's a good time to buy. And when everybody buys, it's a good time to sell. That's what some people say. That's not a recommendation, by the way. But rule number two is diversify. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket. So in other words, let me give you an example. If you have $15,000 and you basically invest in one company, one company goes under, you might lose a good portion. But if you diversify and you invest in 100 companies, the likelihood that all 100 companies are going to go under is not very likely. And so diversification, don't put your eggs all in one basket. And so don't panic sell, diversify. Rule number 3 is study. Look for financial sound companies. By the way, some companies also offer their shareholders dividends, which is, dividends is when a company is profitable, they share their profits with their shareholders, okay? And so there are some companies out there that have pretty significant dividend returns where you get a percentage of what you own in the company back into your share. And so the point is, there are companies that are financially stable. Some are not financially stable. Typically, you can know by how much debt they have, by how much income it comes in. And you can find all of that by spending some time studying. Now, I mentioned here stocks and bonds. What's the bonds? Well, bonds are offered to companies who want to raise more capital, but rather than getting a loan from a bank, the company gets a loan from the bank holder. So when the bond holder, so when you buy a bond, you do not own a share in the company. Instead, you become a creditor to the company who offers the bond. And so you will be paid interest on that amount you lend the company. And so in most cases, it's a fixed interest rate, which makes the investment more stable than a stock. As long as the company basically stays in business, then you will earn a set amount of interest over time. So the stock is you put money into the company and now you own a portion of the company. A bond is you lend money to the company and they give you the return with interest, or as the Bible puts it, with usury, okay? Which is most likely what these men did here. You put something in something and then over time it makes money. And so that's the stock and bonds. But then there is another one, and that is in your notes, you have mutual funds. What are mutual funds? Well, mutual fund is one of the most common ways to invest in stocks and bonds. Most people don't know enough about the stock and the bond market, or they don't have the time to keep up with them. Mutual funds are really, and this is my opinion because I've done this, is the best option in the sense that in a mutual fund, investors basically pool their money together to purchase securities such as stocks and bonds. And so the stocks and the bonds are owned by the mutual fund. And so investors own shares in the mutual fund. Mutual funds are operated by money managers who buy and sell securities to produce profit for the fund. So a mutual fund would be, here are 100 companies, and a portion of that mutual fund owns a portion of a company. And so in other words, instead of you by yourself investing in this company and this company and this company in the stock market, you invest in one mutual fund and you're investing in a bunch of companies. Okay? So that's how that goes typically. So you can easily find, by the way, a mutual fund that has a proven track record of making money over a long period of time. When investing, remember that it's about the long-term gain, not the short-term gain. Don't invest to become a millionaire. Invest to prepare for retirement. I don't know of anybody that's invested over 30, 40 years that hasn't made money through their investments. We're talking about a long period of time. I know, however, lots of people who've lost money by investing in 1 year. Why? Because things change over the short term. Now, know the track record of a mutual fund. It is not difficult to find a mutual fund that averages a 12% return over its lifetime. Steve Brady, he is part of the Heritage Advisory Group. He has suggested that individuals should consider investing in growth stock mutual funds that have a track record of earning 10 to 12% interest over a long period of time. And so that's the mutual funds. Now, sometimes people compare mutual funds with ETFs. What's an ETF? Well, it's an exchanged traded fund. What is that? Well, ETFs are similar to mutual funds in that they grow stocks, they group stocks and bonds together in a single fund. So just like mutual funds, it's a bunch of companies. And so investors who like to have a more hands-on approach often prefer ETFs because they can they trade more like a stock. So a mutual fund, you have limits in that you can't trade during the day. When the trade is made is at the end of the day, while an ETF can be traded during the day. And so there's not really a whole lot of difference. And typically, mutual funds cost more than ETFs. All right, so that's a few things. Then there's real estate. Now some people think that owning real estate, that's the ticket, that's the best thing. Owning real estate can also be an investment opportunity. Now, while some insist that real estate is a better investment than the stock market, it is not immune to a serious downturn as well. Like, for example, right from 2007 to 2009, we have the real estate collapsed. And many homeowners found themselves underwater where they owed more on the house than the house was worth. And by the way, I know people in my family who were flipped. And they couldn't get out of it. Why? Because, well, they can't sell the house. Why? Because they owe more than the house is worth. Back then, the interest rates were 10%, 8 to 10. That's a lot. That's huge. And so so what I'm saying is that's a good investment because it's a physical asset. And again, I think it's the same thing is that, look, the market can collapse, but the truth is it always rebounds. Right? Because actually a house has value. And so again, you're looking at a long track record. A house gains value over time. If you bought a house how many of you have owned a house for over 20 years? Okay. Right? And you're all going to agree with me. It always gains value. The value always increases. Now, could there be years where it goes down? Yeah. Could there be a market collapse? Yeah. But guess what? It rebounds. Because it's an asset, a physical asset that has value. People need houses to live in. And so the value increases. So that's another opportunity. I'm not saying to do it or not to do it. I'm just saying it's an opportunity. Then you have precious metals. So those would be silver, gold. Those, by the way, have been mainstream in every major economy since biblical times. Now, according to advertisers on the radio, gold and silver are the greatest investments of all time. While it is true that the value of precious metals can increase dramatically in a struggling economy, their value can also plummet when the economy revives. Let me give you an example. Those who bought gold when it was at an all-time high in 2011, thinking that the value would continue to go up, they were disappointed because in 2012 it lost 20%. So if you invested in gold and silver in 2011, you lost 20% of what you put in gold and silver by the next year. And so the key, again, this is just a principle, do not buy precious metals when the price is going up. That's a general rule. And so here's my counsel. You know, many advertisers, they come on the radio with their ads about gold and silver, and many of them talk about the uncertainty of the economy and the fear. And as believers, we should never be driven by fear when we make decisions. We should never be driven by fear when we make decisions. This is going to happen. Let me make that decision. We typically make mistakes when you do that. And by the way, the advertisers, they know that. The people who advertise for the stocks and the people who advertise for the mutual funds, the people who advertise for the gold and silver, and the people, it's bombarding you, the advertisement for real estate, invest in real estate, they're going to make money off of you. And they know how to put things to pressure you to say, oh, if I do this, I'm going to miss it. And when we live by impulse, we often make mistakes. Again, if you feel that I need to do this now, it's a wrong investment. What we need to do is be poised, be composed, be, as we talked about, be temperate in all things, and invest, whatever it is, over a long period of time, consistently and faithfully. Will there be lows and highs? Yes. But typically, many of those investments that we describe, if you give it 30, 40 years, which is the goal, your investment will bring a return. And so you have to have a balanced approach. If you put all your money into metals and the economy improves instead of declining, you will regret it. You will regret it. Let me go to another one, IRAs. An IRA is basically it stands for individual retirement accounts. Those are used by millions of people in America. Owners of IRAs choose how they want to invest their money. Typical options include mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs, and CDs, and precious metals. An IRA is simply a vehicle for people to invest their money with a tax advantage. And so there are two types of IRA. There's a traditional IRA, and then there's a Roth IRA. Now, I know there's a lot of information, but you have an opinion. Contributions to traditional IRAs are not taxable. Okay? However, once you retire, the money you receive out of that will be taxable. And so when the laws changed several years ago, they came up with the Roth IRA. That was introduced. And basically, the earnings of a Roth IRA, it grows tax-free. Because you pay taxes on the money, the earnings of a Roth IRA are tax-free at retirement. Because you pay taxes on the money that you've contributed to the IRA, right? So if I take, so it's not something that my employer does, but if I myself put money in a Roth IRA, well, my money that I put in there has already been taxed out of my paycheck, right? They take out your Social Security, Medicare, and state taxes, all those things. And so I've already been taxed. So basically, all that money grows tax-free. Now, when I take it out at retirement in increments, then it will be taxed then. But the point is, it grows tax-free. So if you think, I would put it that what would be the advantage? Well, if you think that your tax rate will be higher when you retire than at the time you make your contribution, a Roth IRA is a pretty good situation. And by the way, do you think taxes are going to go down in 40 years? No, they're not. They always go up, don't they? Yes, that's exactly right. And so, again, we can think about and sometimes you have certain, I think for us, I talked to several people, they recommend it for the size of our family, a Roth IRA was the best option because, we have 6 children, and so it's a good thing to do it that way. Let me go on another one, that is 401ks and 403bs. How many of you have had a 401k? Typically that's with an employer. Okay, so many of you have that. So a 401k, you know what it is? It's an investment opportunity offered to employees by the employer. It is named the 401k part after a part of the Internal Revenue Code. Like an IRA, it is a vehicle to invest money which offers tax advantages. A typical 401k plan invests in mutual funds and shares sometimes of the company's own or shares of the company itself. And so 401ks have been used by large corporations basically to replace pension plans, which I think is a good thing. Many companies will match often the employee contribution up to 3% of a person's income. And so it is good to take advantage of that. If you earn, let's say, $5,000 a month, and the company would match the 3%, that means that if you invest, if you take out $150 out of your $5,000, they will add another $150. So that means that you're investing $300 per month in your 401k. Now, and there's also tax advantages to that. Now, what is a 403b? Well, a 403b is basically similar to a 401k, but it has one main difference. It is offered by nonprofit organizations. Churches, for example, there's many types of nonprofits, but churches is an example that want to offer investment opportunity to their employees. They would have a 403b, and typically they can assign it to a particular mutual fund, and that grows over time. So here are some options. Now, you say, Pastor, why are you covering all this? I'm just telling you that we have a principle in God's Word that we should invest. That when we have money placed in our care, we should not let money just sit there, do nothing. Isn't that a Bible principle? That with whatever God entrusts to us, that we should use it to get more. Not so that we can enrich ourselves, not so that we can become wealthy and walk around and say, look at how rich we are, but so that we can have more to use for God. So that, as the book of Proverbs tells us, so that a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Well, that's only possible if he is invested and made some wise choices over time. But I want to give you one more ways to invest, and that is invest in eternity. Don't make all your investments earthly ones. See, when you die, you're not going to bring any of your possessions with you. 1 Timothy 6:7 says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out." We're not carrying anything out. You know, I really believe this firmly. the reason why we should desire to invest and to gain more with what we already have is because we want to do more for God. Because we want to give more. Because we want to invest in things that are eternal, not things that are temporary. And that ought to be our desire. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 6, if you're still there in Matthew. Matthew chapter 6. Now, Jesus Christ here is teaching His disciples, and He's talking about this world and the things of the world, and He's talking of some of the basic necessities of life. Notice Matthew chapter 6, and, notice verse 19. Notice what He says. Matthew 6:19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. And so, don't lay up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust corrupts, but lay up treasure for heaven, for the Lord. And so we understand that has to be our mindset and our perspective, but I believe it's in Luke chapter 6. Remember what Jesus Christ told His disciples? He says, make of yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness. Remember, he said, you can't serve God and mammon. But He says, the children of this world are wiser than the children of light. What is He saying? He says, sometimes, we may just focus on heaven, and we don't think earthly about preparing ourselves and considering the end and preparing for the evil day and making wise financial investments in our lives. And so He says, make of yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness. So we can't serve mammon, we can't serve God and mammon, but we should use mammon for God's benefit. We can use mammon to provide for our family. We can use mammon, we can use it and make wise financial choices. You remember what Proverbs 6 verse 6 says, go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. What does the ant do? Which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. You see, the ant prepares for the drought of the future. For the time when the ant can what? Cannot work. You get that? When does the ant work? She works. What does she do when she works? She prepares for the time when she cannot work. And we are to consider the ant, the wisdom of the ant. And so we should prepare for the future. And one of those ways is by investing. Now, the spiritual truth of Matthew 25, we know, is that God gives us things in our lives, and we have to consider what we do with what we receive from God. And so I mentioned this throughout this series that, when you work so hard to collect a paycheck and to provide for your family, there ought to be an element where we need to work just as hard to keep as much money as we gain, but also to find ways to multiply the money that we have. That's a Bible principle. Now, is that going to be the same for everybody? It might not be the same. And there's some people who, the truth is, some of you tonight, I know what happened. I know what happened. Why? Because we're all different people. Some of you got upset that I mentioned some of the things tonight. Well, I don't think we should invest in this. Well, I don't think we should invest in housing. I don't think we should invest in gold. I don't think we should invest in the stock market. You know what? You can make your own decisions. But the point is, you need to invest in your future. And you better find a way to do it. Because he that provideth not for his own, the Bible says, is worse than an infidel. And so, whatever society you're in, you got to find ways not only to work hard to gain, to have possessions, but to work hard to keep those possessions and to work very hard to multiply those possessions that you have. And those are the Bible principles that we have. And so what does that mean for you personally? I don't know. But a good thing to do, as many people raise their hand, is they have a financial advisor. That's a good idea. Someone who can give you ideas as to how to invest. But you should consider that, because there's coming a day, and I don't think it's right for me to have a mindset of an attitude, although I hope that if something happens to me in my older years, my desire, if something happens to my parents, is to take care of my parents. Okay? I believe that's the right thing to do. But I don't want to have the mindset, well, when I retire, my children will take care of me. I'll just live off, that's why you have kids after all. No, I don't think God designed life so that I would be a burden to my children. And so we should do our best to prepare for the future. And so what does that mean for you? I don't know what it means for you personally, but I gave you kind of a layout. And by the way, what I would encourage you, if you're like a younger in years and maybe you've just started, I would encourage you to find somebody that's older in the church and to ask them just, hey, what did you do to prepare for your retirement? And they might be able to share to you some mistakes that they've made. And they might be able to share with you even in ways that they've invested. And I think it would encourage you to know, well, this is how much money I've been able to put aside. This is how much money I've gained over time because of those investments or those opportunities. The Bible says, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. But you know what I do know as well? That the people that I know personally, who are, by the way, many of them pastors, who have done nothing, all regret it. They all regret it. They all say, I've made a mistake. I messed up. And now it's too late. And so take it as an encouragement, but also as a warning. Right? There's a sense, the unjust steward did what? He did nothing. You see, and sometimes we must think in our lives, doing nothing can be the wrong thing. Sometimes we may think, well, doing the wrong thing is doing the wrong thing. You're doing a bad thing. No, sometimes doing the wrong thing is doing nothing. And by the way, that servant was called what? Slothful. Now, by the way, I think there's a lot of people probably who could give you better things, better insight into different of those options, who have done it for years. And so in the multitude of counselors, again, there is safety. So here, we're done with the series. Amen. Aren't you glad about that? You're bound to, every time you preach on topic, you're bound to have somebody that's not going to be quite in agreement with what is said. And that's okay. I hope that if nonetheless you receive the biblical principles that are communicated from God's Word in ordering our lives by the principles of God's Word.